Hello, hello. Just waiting for the game to show up. Hopefully. There it is. Oops. There we go. Okay. Sorry I opened up the chapter where we had a restless night's sleep because he was found out by the village well beforehand. And Rika told him some weird things. Oh, whoops, I didn't even read the previous sentence, sorry. I had a restless night's sleep. I did nothing but turn over repeatedly during a night that seemed like it lasted for eternity. Even then, I eventually fell asleep at some point, not realizing how high in the sky the sun had risen. I shook off the urge to go back to sleep. It was then I noticed that the phone was ringing. The time was almost 10:30 in the morning. It was clearly too late for a wake-up call. Akasaka-san? Good morning, it's Oishi. Waking up to the sound of Oishi's voice was little too much of a shock. My delicate ears were ringing. But thanks to that shock, I was suddenly wide awake. Hello. Good morning. Hmm? Could it be you just woke up? Even though you're on assignment, it's still not good to be asleep during regular business hours. You're absolutely right. I'll be more careful in the future. I have another tidbit that might wake you up even more. There was something interesting mixed in with the lost and found at the Hinamizawa police blocks. Police blocks. Lost and found. Let's leave the details for when you get here. You think you'll be able to make it before noon? No, I'll be there right away. Oishi already knew what my mission was, since Oishi already said it was something that would wake me up. It was hard to believe that it would be irrelevant to me. Honestly speaking, judging by the information from Sato-san yesterday, knowing that my cover was already blown, I couldn't wander to and from Hinamizawa carelessly. In other words, my investigation was at an impasse. If there was some information there that could put me back on the trail, that would be nothing less than a stroke of good fortune. After vigorously washing my face, I pulled on my jacket and hailed a taxi, heading towards the Okonomiya police station. Oh, you're here. The genius mahjong player has arrived. My apologies for being late. So exactly what popped up? With absolutely no intention of reminiscing about last night's mahjong game, I pressured him to get to the point. Oishi, anticipating that I would act that way, cut to the chase without any resistance. Like I said earlier, something arrived from the Hinamizawa police boxes lost and found this morning. Lost items that were turned over to the police box were sent to Okonomiya Station after the paperwork was filled out. Oishi pulled out a plastic bag from a drawer and laid its labeled contents on the desk. I feel like it's a bit weird that the police box sends it over just after the paperwork is filled out. You'd think it'd stay there just for a little bit. Oh, we already sent it to the Okonomiya Station, a place that you have to ride a bike for like 30 minutes at least. On a dangerous one-way road. Have fun. Is that a wallet? Indeed. There was small change inside, but no bills. We thought that a pickpocket threw it away after pulling out the contents. At first. I didn't understand how this wallet, so far removed from Tokyo, could possibly be related to the kidnapping, unless it has some kind of student ID for a child that's been kidnapped. If it had drawn Oishi's attention, it would have to be something dramatic, like if the wallet belonged to the missing grandchild. Called it. That would be absurd. Like something that convenient would happen. If that was it, then there was probably initials written on the wallet. Like the initials of Toshiki Inugai, the minister's grandson, T.I. Thinking like that, at this point, I didn't suppose that this wallet was something that could get Oishi so excited. Oishi, after putting on a pair of disposable plastic gloves, handed me a pair of the same. I didn't feel that this wallet was such an important thing, so I had my doubts about whether there was any point in putting on gloves. However, I didn't want Oishi's intentions to go to waste, so I put them on. Oishi opened up the plastic bag and pulled it out, showing me the back. As I had imagined, there were initials engraved there, but it was slightly more detailed than what I had thought, with Toshiki I marked on it. Oishi grinned at me with a look on his face that said, "See? We can't confirm that from that this belongs to the minister's grandson," I informed him calmly. This wallet was irrelevant. It was nothing more than Oishi's overeagerness. Unless, first of all, there was absolutely no way, in this distant locale, that the missing grandson's wallet would be found with such convenient timing. After all, the Onikafuji Defense Alliance wasn't related to the case in the first place. So there was no way this wallet belonged to the grandson. What? Oh. Why I wanted to decide that was the case, even I didn't really know. Even though what should have been a top-secret case was leaked before it even had been dispatched. In this situation, how could I say this was definitely unrelated? Would it be more prudent to pay more attention to this wallet? It had only been a couple of days since I arrived in Hinamizawa. But in those couple of days, due to the number of remarkable events, my nerves might have become just a little frayed. Shaking my head slightly, I cleared it of unnecessary thoughts. Oishi opened the wallet zipper, revealing the contents. Inside was small change and a number of crumpled receipts. Ooh, receipts. Oishi from that jumble pulled out a folded card. Seeing that, my heart stopped for a moment. It was a card from a dental examination. The name Toshiki Inugai and the age. A perfect match. The dentist's location was in Tokyo. There was no need to explain any further. How far was it from Tokyo to Hinamizawa? It was far enough that taking the bullet trains and cars would still take several hours. Why would a wallet with a dental examination card from Tokyo inside show up in Hinamizawa? Could it belong to a tourist who came from Tokyo? Or maybe a villager on vacation in Tokyo just happened to pay a visit to the dentist. No, it had to have fallen into somebody's bag by accident. In my mind, I desperately struggled to find a possible excuse as to why this wallet didn't belong to Toshiki Inugai. It was as if it wouldn't do for this wallet to belong to him. However, weeding out any possibility for error one by one, the haze surrounding the wallet in front of me faded, gradually letting it come into clear focus. See? I felt a shiver of electricity run up my spine. My pulse quickened, and a thin film of sweat began to coat my entire body. From Oishi's point of view, I was probably slack-jawed and spaced out, with a slovenly look on my face. Did you get information from the dental office? That's your job, Akasaka-san. I didn't go that far. When did this wallet show up? Yesterday. The person who picked it up was a villager. Gasp. They did so yesterday, it seems. Gasp. Not that. I mean, when was this wallet dropped? Gasp. It rained here last week, exactly 7 days ago. It doesn't look like the contents are water damaged, so the longest it could be would probably be 6 days. Does anybody else at this station have knowledge of the existence of this wallet? The officer who first encountered it at the Hinamizawa police box, and also the 2 or 3 people in charge of the lost and found. Other than that, it's just me and you. If it's involved in a classified case, it'd be bad to talk about, wouldn't it? I don't intend to wag my tongue. May I borrow a phone? Go ahead. Dial 0 to get an outside line. I dialed the phone number inscribed on the examination card. I could hear my pulse pounding inside my head. Could there possibly be something so absurd? The addresses on the receipts and cards inside the wallet were all from around the area where the grandson lived. The name on the examination card was also a match. The time we deduced that the wallet had been left behind also matched up with the timeline of the kidnapping. Of course, it was possible I could just laugh it off as all a big pile of coincidences. There wasn't any strong evidence. Rather than all this circumstantial proof, the contents of the phone call I was about to make would have a much greater meaning. Hello, sorry to keep you waiting. This is dental office. Hello, this is the police. I have a misplaced wallet here, and am trying to get in contact with the owner. Would you be able to help me? Inside the wallet, there was an examination card from your office. Yes. The name is Toshiki Inugai. If I give you the number on the card, would you be able to look up the phone number? Yes, thank you. If you could. Still holding the receiver, I pulled out a notebook from my breast pocket with my free hand. I'll have to remember this trick to find out people's information. No, don't do that. Because obviously they'll be like, okay, what actual police station are you from? What's your name? And so on. I opened it up to the page with the grandson's address and phone number recorded on it. Yes, hello. Yes, go ahead. I compared the phone number written in my notebook to the one that was being read out on the other end of the line. During that process, I spun around to look behind me uneasily. I locked eyes with Oishi. Oishi looked puzzled, wondering what the matter was. Why would I feel uneasy and look behind me? That was because the person on the end of the line was reading out the numbers as though doing so straight from my notebook. It seemed that HQ was in quite an uproar thanks to my report. No matter how many times the authenticity of the evidence I had linked to the grandson was called into question, I could only respond that it was the truth. When the lead investigator first picked up the phone, I was grilled about the evidence I had found that was almost too good to be true, if I do say so myself. But after having doubt after doubt dispelled, he fell into silence. The receiver was finally handed over to the section chief. When he picked it up, the background thrum on the other end of the line disappeared, and I knew that it had gone completely silent. After asking the same questions about the wallet that the lead investigator did, the chief quietly spoke his next words. Got it. We'll dispatch several people as reinforcements. They should be able to make it there by evening. Akasaka-kun, please continue with your investigation of the area. Get some information on the spot where the wallet was found. Kano-san will select some people and head directly there. The fact that he was sending Kano, the lead investigator, here meant that the chief had decided that there was a possibility that the Onigufuchi defense lines were somehow implicit in the kidnapping. However, it felt as though until the lead investigator, whom he trusted, had verified the evidence with his own eyes, he was still going to be skeptical about it. How did it go? It seems that HQ is sending reinforcements. I was ordered to investigate the area. Where was the wallet dropped? Around Takatsudo, apparently. This is Okunomiya. All the way over here, this is Hinamizawa. Then, even further upstream, way up around here is Takatsudo. Oishi explained where the wallet was found by pointing to locations on the map on the wall. This place called Takatsudo was even more remote than Hinamizawa was. There's hardly anybody living in the area around Takatsudo. It was deserted a long time ago. Littered with abandoned houses, so it's really quite desolate around there. Perfect place to leave someone kidnapped. Oishi-san, could I ask you to guide me to Takatsudo? Yeah, I don't mind. You can't really get in and out of Hinamizawa as you please by yourself, after all. Of course, I'll have to make you wear the cap and mask again. That Oishi had agreed to accompany me was very reassuring. If Sato-san's information was to be believed... Ooh, that's a terrible sentence. No B. My cover had been blown. I wasn't sure if the villagers had realized that the fresh meat dispatched from public safety was the tourist that had visited the village yesterday. In other words, me. But deciding that they hadn't noticed would have been overly optimistic. Given a cursory thought, Takatsudo, where the wallet was found, couldn't be ruled out as a hiding spot for the kidnappers. The Takatsudo area didn't have any residential buildings, nor was it alongside a highway. There wasn't a reason for even the locals to go out of their way to visit it. It was exactly what you would call a long-forgotten ghost town at the end of the road. You couldn't ask for a better place to hold a kidnapped grandson. Also, you couldn't get to Takatsudo without passing through Hinamizawa first. Those several conditions made the area all the more important. I couldn't brush it off any longer. There was no longer any doubt that the Onigufuchi defense lines, or somebody hired by them, were involved in the kidnapping. If that was the case, then the fact that this wallet was found might have already been leaked to them. They even knew so much as how the Public Safety Division was operating. The case of the wallet couldn't be something they didn't know. I mean, aren't they talking about the thing that's like, they should let him go? There was a possibility that the enemy was lying in wait. To dive alone into enemy territory surrounded by enemy territory, to say the least, required an amount of courage, nay, recklessness that I just did not have. Without your company, Oishi-san, I wouldn't be able to step into the village so easily. Thank you very much for your cooperation. Honestly, I thought you would ask for more money. Well, if we're being honest, Hinamizawa isn't exactly the place I like to go to. I'd at least appreciate it if you paid for cab fare. Still, it's not a request I can refuse from a friend that's played at the same table as me. Oishi grinned as he pounded me on the back. It struck me that he just didn't want to jump ship rather than having any sort of sense of duty towards his job. Even so, that didn't really matter. It's sort of the opposite. Well, it's sort of the same thing. Like, his sense of duty wouldn't let him jump ship. Like, in the future, he really wanted to find out who was behind the chain of mysterious deaths. And that's sort of out of his sense of duty, but also he didn't want to jump ship off of that. Right now, I really appreciated the gesture. Well then, shall we hurry up and get going? If the enemy knew that the police had obtained the wallet, then they would probably have moved the hostage to a different place. There wasn't a moment to lose. But Oishi, without regard to the fact that we were about to head out, began to remove his jacket. What are you doing? Well, just a precaution. If you want me to poke the beehive to get your honey, I have to be rather well prepared, you see? Do you want to put one on, too? What Oishi pulled out from the drawer below the desk was a stab-proof vest. Oh, right, because guns aren't common at all in Japan. Thankfully. The music ends. His name was Toshiki Inugai, the grandson of the Minister of Construction, Inugai. There was only one reason for him being here. If you didn't include gym or art class, whose grades were above average. That was the result of having private tutoring sessions twice a week. What about his gym or art class, though? He needs private tutors for that, too. If you omitted the fact that he still couldn't do pull-ups, there wasn't much else that would make him hate school. Of course, he understood full well that his grandfather was a cabinet minister, but he also knew that not too many people were that interested in their relationship. He didn't like to go out of his way to bring up his grandfather, or to call him the Minister of Construction. Finally, he at least tried to know a little more about what kind of work the Minister of Construction did than your average Joe. What that entailed was that when you tried your best to make life better for the masses, sometimes you made a few enemies. He knew that all too well from the time he had spent as class representative. His grandfather had many enemies. He knew that he might personally catch some of that fallout, so he had to be twice as cautious. He was taught that by his parents. That's why, the moment he was kidnapped, he instantly knew that this was one of those occasions. He understood that he wasn't being treated as Toshiki Inugai, the person, but rather as Toshiki Inugai, the grandson of the Minister of Construction. That he wasn't personally at fault, but that this was the result of some unavoidable trouble with his grandfather's work. It made little difference, but when he realized it wasn't because of anything he did, he was able to relax, if only a little. Of course, at first he was struck with a terror befitting his age, wondering what was going to happen to him. But after a while of being tied up and only able to stay lying down, he began to ponder a great many things. First, he thought about the reason he was being abducted like this. He understood the answer to that easily. He was taken hostage to, of course, his grandfather, the minister. There was no doubt about that. He didn't know exactly what the Minister of Construction did, but it was easy to imagine that there was much to be gained from threatening him. He respected his grandfather more than most. He earnestly believed that his own grandfather was within the top 20 of the most important people in Japan. That was exactly why he wouldn't forgive anybody who tried to threaten his beloved grandfather. More importantly, he wouldn't forgive anybody who would use him as a tool to threaten his grandfather. His grandfather was really busy and rarely had time to meet with relatives. That's why, with what little time he did manage to scrape together, he just dropped by unannounced. And as an apology for not being able to meet during New Year's or summer vacation, he doted on his grandson very, very much. The number of times that Toshiki was looked upon with disregard just because his grandfather was a politician and a minister certainly weren't few. But he never thought even once that he wanted his grandfather to quit being a politician. Because it was his beloved grandfather, he wanted him to continue his career as long as possible from the bottom of his heart. However, Toshiki was now being held hostage, and his grandfather was being threatened. His grandfather, who called him the apple of his eye, was surely suffering. He might do anything to save his grandson, maybe even putting aside his ideology if it was required to save his grandson. He might cave into the culprit's demands if it meant saving his grandson. When Toshiki thought about that, An inexplicable anger welled up within him. In his current situation, he was unable to forgive the cowards who would make his beloved grandfather suffer by using such dastardly means. That feeling swelled up inside of him, displacing the fear. What he thought of first was something any boy would imagine. Get out of these bonds, beat up the bad guys, then hand them over to the police. Images of all the brave heroes from all the manga he had read passed through the back of his mind. In his imaginary scenario, he slipped his bonds easily, floating like a butterfly to evade his captors, then stinging like a bee to bring them all down. In the end, it was nothing more than a silly little fantasy, but with his vision obstructed and unable to see anything, it was something that he could get into more than any anime at the moment. In actuality, he was enjoying these little scenarios in his head for the long period of time he was tied up. His captors hadn't really done anything to him that they would feel sorry for. However, eventually he began to grow tired of his fantasies, and more realistic scenarios began to run through his head. It was then that he realized that none of them were a solution. Yes, he wanted to do something for his grandfather who was being threatened. That he was being held here to inflict pain on his grandfather was the thing he could at least forgive. And also the most vexing. And then he noticed. There was a much simpler way he could save his grandfather without having to beat up his despicable captors. That was to remove himself as a hostage from the hands of these villains. If he was to disappear from here, his captors would have nothing to threaten his grandfather with. The captors had restrained him, but they didn't treat him roughly, and they made sure he was fed well enough, meaning at most he was nothing more than the means for their threat. They weren't looking to bully or kill him out of spite. If he behaved, no ill would befall him. Realizing that gave him a strong sense of courage, and carrying his train of thought this far, he let it run its course to its natural conclusion: suicide. Right now, at this moment, Toshiki Inugai had decided to escape. His ears had been stuffed with a sponge-like material, acting as makeshift earplugs. However, they didn't actually do much to block out any sound, and he could overhear everything his captors were saying. Realizing that this was to his advantage, even when his captors spoke to him, he acted like he couldn't hear them due to the earplugs. His captors, thinking that he couldn't hear their conversation, talked about all sorts of things without any reservations. You'd think they'd test it on themselves rather than believing he couldn't hear them. Thanks to that, he was able to obtain various pieces of information. First off, this wasn't Tokyo. Gasp. It seemed that this was quite a distance away, and on top of that, in the countryside, nestled deep in the mountains. It also seemed that his captors were inconvenienced to living out here, so he could deduce that this place was far removed from any sort of town. Finally, whenever they went out to buy food or other supplies, they would always take a car. That fact caused him some dismay, because he knew that the method he learned at school of running around blindly while shouting for help wouldn't work here. He paused this little mental escape scenario there. His ultimate goal was to find somebody who would help him. If somebody who fit the description wasn't close by, his chances of escaping successfully grew slim. A desolate, far-off land deep in the mountains. A place where you couldn't even go shopping without using a car. In this situation, escaping would be very difficult. He grew depressed, and after a little while, he returned to his original scenario. Imagining becoming a hero like in the manga he read and beating down his captors became his respite. However, as he played those delusions out in his head, his heart, hating to surrender, continued to search for a way to escape. And then he thought of a way. If the goal was far away, then all he had to do was get closer. His goal, in a nutshell, was to find somebody who would help him. In other words, somebody other than his captors. If he faked being sick, then his captors would have to take him to the hospital, or bring a doctor to him. They would probably be reluctant to do that. But he already knew that the hostage was more important than anything. In the off chance that something happened, like him dying, occurred, they wouldn't be able to threaten anybody anymore. I mean, they haven't asked for any proof because this is the 80s, so they can't really do a phone call or so on. Just like, well, where's your grandson then? Haha. Luckily, he had an experience that would help him fake a serious illness. At the end of last year, he was inadvertently involved in a car accident and had to undergo surgery. The scar from that surgery was still clearly visible on his lower torso. He recalled the pain and suffering from that time. The existence of that experience would make a huge impact on the realism of his performance. He was quite confident in his ability to fake an illness. It's not even illness, it's pain. His captors at first took that as a sign he needed to use the washroom. Untying only his arms, they tried to bring him there while he was still blindfolded. But he didn't try to get up. His hands, now free, only clutched at his abdomen as he writhed in agony. Hey, what's wrong? Does your stomach hurt? He still had his earplugs in, so he had to pretend he didn't hear his captors asking him a question. He was about to nod, so he hurriedly had to stop himself. What's the matter? Yeah, the kid's clutching at his stomach. Must be a stomachache or something. His captors looked down on his suffering form for a bit. One of them proposed a course of action, while another laid his doubts that Toshiki might be faking it. What's wrong, boy? Your tummy hurt? His ears are plugged, so he can't hear you. Well, that's the problem. Do you got any medicine that works on stomach pain? Might want to go to the pharmacy and buy some? When it comes to stomach pain, there's a bunch of different meds, isn't there? As long as we don't know the cause, we shouldn't just buy him any old medicine. He's old in his stomach. Maybe he's just constipated. If you buy him some medicine for that, maybe that'll calm him down. It won't kill him if we're wrong, neither. Don't decide something like that on your own. It might be appendicitis or something. My uncle suddenly got it a while ago. That was pretty scary. One of the captors leaned over beside the boy, who was bent over in agony. I feel sorry for the kid. Whoa, his whole body's covered in sweat. Is it your stomach? Does it hurt? Hey, if it hurts, you shouldn't clutch at it so tightly. It'll only make it worse. Realizing that his captors were concerned about his stomach, he inadvertently let his shirt right up, letting the scar from his surgery come into plain view. His vision was still obscured with packing tape, so he couldn't see their reactions to his scar. But his captors were taken aback, and judging from their momentary silence, he obtained the reaction he was looking for. Hey, this is bad. This scar, it's not that old. Does that boy have a fever? There a thermometer around? No way we have one, but that's a lot of sweat. Yeah, his forehead feels pretty hot, I think. I've heard that under prolonged stress, old wounds can be aggravated. And what will we do? Are you saying that medicine won't work? We don't know what surgery the scar was from. But in any case, this is bad. In the worst case, it could be fatal. This is bad. This is really, really bad. Maybe we should have a doctor take a look at it. At this rate, there's a chance that he might suddenly die on us. Toshiki Inugai, with those few words, knew that the situation was progressing exactly as he envisioned it, and snickering to himself on the inside, pressed his act further. He didn't even need to see to know that his captors were panicked and were running around like chickens with their heads cut off at this troublesome turn of events. Should we take him to the clinic? No, that's no good. Probably better if that doctor came here. Dr. Erie, you mean? Is that okay? Will that be alright? It'd be worse if anything happened to the hostage. Nothing we could do. It's emergency. One of the captors hurriedly left in the car. Another of the men, completely shaken up at this point, wiped the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. It looked like they were bringing a doctor. As long as the doctor wasn't an accomplice, that doctor was his goal. He was someone he should seek help from. His captors were probably wary of that happening. They would be prepared for it. This would all come down to luck. Some of the sweat emerging from his brow was from that nervousness. At that moment, the packing tape that was covering his eyes and ears was torn off. The burning light that he was seeing for the first time in several days hurt his eyes. After that, the gag that made it hard for him to breathe was also removed. Are you alright, kid? We're bringing a doctor to you right now. Just hold on for a bit. The doctor was coming. The doctor was coming. Now, how is he going to ask for help, and how is he going to get away from his captors? A plethora of thoughts began swirling through his mind. I think you know this already, but don't say anything unnecessary to the doctor. We don't want to hurt you or anything. You understand that, right? Toshiki Inugai nodded while feigning pain and obedience. His expectations and the enemy's expectations. Whether they doubted he was faking his illness or not, they knew what his goal was and would try to stop it. His stomach contracted from the stress of this gambit, making it seem like his stomach really was starting to hurt. No, it really was. But there was no reason to panic. If he failed with his approach to the doctor, there was nothing to lose. If there was something to lose, it was this method of faking illness to get in touch with the doctor. If he could think of other methods from here on out, it wasn't much. But at the present, this was the easiest and most dramatic way he could think of. The more he thought about it, the more it looked like this was his first and last gambit. Eventually, he heard the sound of a car approaching once again. The sound of the car doors being hurriedly opened and shut. The sounds of several footsteps approaching. A young man in a white medical coat. As he acknowledged the boy, a suspicious look showed itself on his face. Who's he? He's not one of the kids from the village, is he? The captors didn't respond. From the looks of it, the young doctor had realized that this was an abnormal situation. One of the captors talked threateningly. That's got nothing to do with you, Doc. For a while, the doctor and the captors silently glared at one another. However, unable to stand the sight of the boy continuing to suffer, the doctor, as the captors had hoped, didn't press any further. I'm concerned about this old surgical scar. What kind of operation was it? We don't know. I should really bring him back to the clinic. Doc, we really can't do that. The doctor said he wanted to bring the boy back to the clinic, but the captors simply silently shook their heads at the notion, except he wasn't silent. It was a fleeting hope, but it was only natural that the captors would refuse. At that moment, his eyes met with the doctor's. Seeing that the boy's painful state was abnormal, the doctor suspected it was a serious illness. Are you all right? I'm a doctor. When was this surgical scar from? Last year. During the winter. From an accident. An accident? I see. This is a problem. He couldn't let the doctor figure out that he was faking it here. He had to somehow figure out some way to keep this going and tell the doctor that he was being confined and needed help. I'm going to touch the affected area, okay? If it hurts, tell me where. Seeing that it was extremely painful, the doctor crossed his arms and began to ponder. He had to somehow get himself to a hospital. To Toshiki Inagai, faking this illness was the performance of a lifetime. I guess we're switching back to Oishi and so on. And Akasaka. Yep. Good work, everyone. I know it's hot, but please do your best. If you catch anybody illegally dumping, please contact someone immediately. We'll act quickly. Thank you for your cooperation, Oishi-san. Please. A gap wide enough for a single car was opened up in the barricade. Oishi, showing his gratitude, or perhaps a threatening attitude, with a short beep on the horn, rolled the car forward through the checkpoint. This time, my appearance was the very embodiment of the word suspicious. A baseball cap, mask, and sunglasses. On top of that, even though it was sweltering, I was wearing a hoodie. Any respectable police officer would be loath to not stop me for questioning. I had meant to be overcautious, knowing full well that my face was known. But it might have already been too late for that to have any use. Using that as an excuse, I doffed the unbearably hot hoodie and windbreaker, ripped off the mask and hat, and threw them in the seat behind me. Oh my, is that okay? With a cheap little disguise like this, they probably figured it out anyways. That just might be the case. Oishi, probably thinking that my unexpected behavior was funny, continued to laugh. The beautiful and pristine scenery of Hinamizawa spread out before me. The village itself would have been quite beautiful if it weren't for the complicated circumstances surrounding it at the moment. I would absolutely love to take Yukie here for a drive one day. Come to think of it, I didn't get a chance to call her last night. I played around with the idea in my head. But in reality, this village wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. I had heard everything at the prefectural office, headquarters. At the heart of this village, the intelligence network that the three families wielded was, due to blood ties and regional relationships, unbelievably well organized. Their net spread not just around Hinamizo itself, but encapsulated the entirety of the city of Shishiboni as well. When I first heard that, somewhere in the recesses of my mind, I didn't take it completely seriously. How could a local organization in the boonies here have something so grandiose? I couldn't deny that somewhere in the back of my mind I had ridiculed the thought. But not only were they really threatening the minister, but they had demonstrated they had a complete grasp on our movements, which were supposed to be top secret. They were almost like the secret police that controlled a small Eastern European country like in some spy novel. The villagers here wouldn't bat an eye at getting their hands dirty if it meant fighting the dam project. I also heard something like that at the prefectural headquarters. Now that you mention it, when I first arrived here, Oishi also said that this place was a war zone, didn't he? The residents of this village were at the same time freedom fighters. Although by definition they were no different than guerrillas or militia. They weren't protected by the Geneva Convention, but they also didn't have to adhere to those rules either. This place was more of a quagmire than any legitimate battlefield. A secret war was unfolding. I could drive along because Oishi was with me, but if I was to leave this car for even something as trivial as looking for a vending machine, there was a chance I wouldn't return. Even though a single shot hadn't been fired, this was a battlefield. No, the reason why bullets weren't flying was simply because it was hard for a civilian to obtain a gun in Japan. So they were probably just equipped with weapons other than guns that were easier to obtain. That was why Oishi was wearing that stab-proof vest, wasn't it? Aksaka-san, are you nervous? The fact that I was apprehensive was, of course, picked up on by Oishi. If he already figured it out, there was no point in trying to deny or hide it. Of course I am. We're headed into the heart of enemy territory alone, aren't we? I'm worried about if something unlikely happens with just the two of us. Something unlikely? It'll be alright. Isn't everybody in this village our enemy? If everybody gets their story straight, they could murder someone in broad daylight and there wouldn't be a shred of evidence. I'm asking about something like that. This was what the ironclad rule of not barging into a Yakuza office alone was about. If there wasn't a neutral party involved, that area wasn't bound by the laws of common sense. If something happened, you wouldn't be able to prove it, and there wasn't anybody who would take your side. It was pretty much the definition of poking the bear. I left word that we're headed towards the Hinamizo area. And in the worst case, we've also got a radio. I know you're scared, Akasaka-san, but it's not that easy to pull off the perfect crime. Well, of course that doesn't mean we can let our guard down either. Akasaka-san, you're too worked up over this. You were more relaxed the last time we came up here together, weren't you? Laughing it off, Oishi thumped his chest and grinned, as if to say I could depend on him. Well, if it gets really iffy... This comes with having the badge. Oishi made a motion by sticking out his index finger. It was undoubtedly the image of a gun. Will it be of any use? If you're not afraid of dealing with the aftermath after you shoot, it's actually very reassuring. An officer's gun was only for show. If you really wanted to fire it, there were quite a number of stipulations, and you had to be prepared for the long probationary period afterwards. That definitely wasn't worth it, so even if an officer did unholster his gun, there wasn't one who actually wanted to pull the trigger. Akasaka-san, are you carrying one? A piece. Well, yeah. You ever fired it? I have. For training, though. Well, I guess that'd be true. Well then, have you, Ushi-san? Me? Nah, there's no way. What was this? I thought he was laughing at me because he had experience. The two of us laughed together. I've also never pointed the barrel at anybody. I've looked down the barrel of a gun a few times, though. Just being made to look down the barrel like that is enough to shorten your lifespan by about 3 years. Even if he had never fired a gun before, you couldn't even begin to compare the amount of experience which he had over me. At a time like this, I could only marvel again at how reliable she seemed. Come to think of it, I didn't want to come this way in the middle of the day. But there's no way for a car to get through other than here. Akasaka-san, just in case, put on the mask again to hide your face, please. What's the matter? Can you not hear it because the air conditioning is too loud? I'll turn it off. Try opening the window. When I opened the window, a blast of hot air blew inside, and then I could hear angry yelling coming from far away. At that moment, the forest gave way on either side of us, and our view expanded suddenly. Dam site, yep. And there could be seen the Hinamizawa Dam construction grounds, the very front line for Hinamizawa Village. We're absolutely opposed to the construction of the Hinamizawa Dam. The crackling blare of someone's voice sounded over an enormous loudspeaker. The roar of angry voices continued to rumble. The incredible volume had become a veritable sound cannon, spewing out its ammunition. The prefabricated site office was surrounded by 2 sets of high fences, laced with barbed wire. Lined up in front of those fences were riot police in their vehicles, and surrounding it all were the villagers. They held out their protests against the dam as a single entity. Oh, there's not too many of them today. We're in luck. That's not too many. Yeah, when there's a lot of them, the crowd reaches as far as the road. You wouldn't even be able to inch forward in a car. At first, due to their overwhelming intensity, it looked to me like there were more people there than there actually was, but upon closer inspection, there were at most 50 to 70 of them. But the 6 or 7 propaganda trucks lined up that looked like they belonged to a band of thugs were a strange enough sight. The villagers were also wearing helmets and bandanas, as well as covering their faces with masks, adding to the oddity of it all. The propaganda trucks, after braying their chorus, had their volume turned up even higher, and began to flood the area with sutras. To say that the noise was downright violent wouldn't be an understatement. From this distance, it was still this loud. The glass in the office was probably rattling from the noise. They can't do anything there but take it. Those riot squad guys, every one of them is wearing earplugs, but they're still having their hearing damaged. Poor sobs. Can't you do something about it with noise ordinance laws? Our prefecture doesn't have any laws regarding noise ordinance. Ouch. Also, those are sutras, right? We can't regulate religious activities? Those guys are pretty smart. Nah, is what I think Oishi said. Actually, no matter how tightly the window was shut, the booming sound of the sutras still filled the car. I couldn't even hear what Oishi, who was sitting right next to me, was saying. As the car approached the line of propaganda trucks, the blare became difficult to bear. It wasn't enough to just plug my ears with my fingers. I had to hold my head to keep my skull from splitting apart. If I had seen this terrifying energy sooner, I would have probably understood what Hinamizawa Village was much quicker. Now I knew. They wouldn't blink an eye at sacrificing themselves in order to protect their hometown. Ah, so goddamn noisy. Shut up, shut up, shut up! My head throbbed and felt like it was going to split apart. My eardrums crackled, and on top of it all, I felt like I was going to throw up. With the road crowded with the throng of squatters, the propaganda trucks, and the riot police's vehicles, it was in no way easy to get by. Even if you tried to shoot the squatters with the car horn, they were also wearing earplugs, oblivious to noises from the outside world, and wouldn't easily move. The car could only inch forward at a snail's pace. Even then, the car eventually got through, starting to leave the tumultuous noise behind. Hey, the bald guy that was playing mahjong with us last night, remember him? I remember that there was an older person who didn't exactly mince words. The guy that Oishi called Old Man. There was someone like that. You see, he's the foreman of the main construction site. He's probably holed up in that prefab building, trying to work while irritated out of his mind. Poor fella. You wouldn't be able to stand it if it's like that every day. Yeah. There's no end to the number of people who can't handle it and quit. But every time that happens, their wages go up, so I won't say it's in vain. Even having to deal with all that noise and hostility, they still made a wage that Oishi found enviable. Damn it, these guys. Can they hear or can't they? A group of squatters were in the way of the car. Oishi, sufficiently annoyed, laid into the horn, but there was no indication that they were moving any time soon. In this din, could they not even hear a car horn? Or did they hear it and were being malicious? If there were any riot police nearby, they would have made people move, but it just so happened there weren't any around here. Jeez, wait just a minute. Oishi opened up the door. The hot air and even more heated roar of the crowd spilled into the car. Oishi said something as he grinned widely, but I couldn't hear what it was. He was getting them to move. Something like that? Oishi stepped out of the car and closed the door. The din faded slightly. I stared blankly as Oishi headed towards the group and started some sort of conversation. Maybe we'd find the minister's grandson at Takatsudo. At the very least, I wanted to find him there. Find him and slip the cursed bonds of this incomprehensible village. I could only pray. At that moment, a shadow was suddenly cast over me. Somebody was standing right outside the passenger side window, blocking the sunlight. I spun around, looked up, and realized who the backlit figure was. It was a girl. It was Rika Furude. The girl stared down at me with a bored look in her eyes. I didn't have any justification for it, but I felt like I had been found by somebody I shouldn't be found by. To fill the silence, I raised my hand as I mouthed a meek greeting. Of course, there was no way she heard my small voice in this clamor. But even then, she should have seen me wave my hand in greeting. In spite of that, she simply stared down at me with a cold look on her face. At that moment, the noise and heat spread throughout the car once again. Oishi had returned to the driver's seat. Taking a look, the group that were blocking the road had started to move aside while glaring our way. Sorry to keep you waiting. Shall we go? Oishi registered the figure of the girl behind me. One of the villagers came over and picked her up. In a manner of, it's dangerous, so get away. It was then that she whispered one or two words. However, I couldn't hear any of it. Well then, let's go. I'm going to gun it, okay? But of course, still within the speed limit. As if to shake off the still audible angry voices, Oishi floored the gas. Along with the roar and the din and the shouting, the villagers and the girl quickly disappeared behind us. As soon as we're through here, we're in Takatsudo. Are you okay if we end up getting into a firefight? Don't be fumbling with the safety at the last moment, you hear? Oishi laughed mockingly again. I was more concerned with what the girl had said, however, as I was vaguely bothered by it. What was she trying to say with that apathetic and candid expression? Suppose it's normal if you're nervous from here on out. But if you don't deal with it, there's a chance it might do something rash. But there was no longer a way to confirm what the girl had tried to tell me. It might have been that the girl who warned me to go back to Tokyo again, or else was saying to me who was here now, ignoring that warning. Even though I warned you. What a fool. I had the feeling she said something like that. Is that the end of the chapter? I sort of doubt it, but... yeah, I thought so. If you were to call Hinamizuwa a rather lonely village, then Takatsudo was outright desolate. For your everyday city boy like me, I just couldn't understand why anybody would force themselves to live here. There were signs that people had, but they were all covered in dust or enveloped in ivy, indicating that it was all abandoned. People really lived in a place like this, didn't they? Well, it was a long time ago. A remote place like this is pretty rough for old folk to live. And the younger people probably want to try living in a more suitable place. If there's nobody left to take the reins, all that gets left is this. Even if I had no personal attachment to the village, seeing the disused buildings made me feel a little sentimental. It seemed that Oishi also felt the same way. Was the wallet found over here? The person who found it must have a good reason to come out to this desolate place. Yeah, there's some villagers who have a field out in the mountains here. They pass by here in the morning and evenings. The villagers who work in the fields walk by here every day? No way. They probably go as far as they can by car. So in the early mornings and evenings they pass by here and just happen to find a single wallet? They probably did. Nah. Where exactly did they say they found it? In a thicket just a bit further ahead. The person who found the wallet just happened to have some stomach cramps and was planning to use the ticket to do his business, it seems. It was there he happened to find it. Probably hoping there was some toilet paper in there. Everything about that story just seems a little too convenient. Right from the discovery of the wallet, I just can't shake the feeling that something's off. I expressed the feeling I had from the start of the day quite frankly. It seemed too good to be true, but was unwavering proof. But it was too perfect, sickeningly so. That was my feeling. You might actually be onto something by saying it's all a little too perfect. Meaning? The truth is, I heard a little something from a friend of mine in the 4th Division, where Oryo Sonozaki referenced the kidnapping of the minister's grandson. She referenced it. Yeah, it's been several days since the minister's grandson has been kidnapped. Poor boy. It'd be nice if they let him go soon. It seems that old Oreo muttered something like that while on her veranda. And that little musing was conveyed to the various people working deep behind the scenes at the Sonozaki family. Wait, I had heard something earlier from Sato-san, the informant. That when the leader Oreo had a concern, somebody in the family would be considerate. So in essence, she gave the order to release the hostage? I see it that way. The wallet being conveniently discovered was just a ploy to hand the boy over to the police. Why would they release the hostage? Well, there's only one reason why somebody would release a hostage, isn't there? What is it? Their demands were met. That would mean the minister promised to halt the Hinamizawa Dam project. The dam project will definitely go away. At that moment, those words that the little girl had said resurfaced in the back of my mind. In the end, it was turning out exactly as she had proclaimed. That young girl knew the circumstances. She knew everything about this kidnapping incident, from the beginning to the end. Akasaka. The girl unexpectedly called my name. What is it? Go back to Tokyo. Huh? Before long you will... Same stuff. Oh, girl laughing. The girl who knew everything from start to finish had warned me in the beginning. Go back to Tokyo. Akasaka is such a coward. Excuse me 1 second while I take care of the dog. And back in. We'll probably find the boy. But what happens afterwards will probably be a bit of a problem. How it will be a problem, though, is something a single officer like me can't figure out. Do you know a girl named Rika Furude? What I had said was such a non sequitur that Oishi sat in stunned silence for a while. Of course I know her. She's the only daughter of the Furude family, one of the 3 families. What kind of girl is she? Well, well. This was an unexpected name to hear. I'm a bit surprised. Does public safety think that the Furude family smells fishy and wants to keep an eye on them? Share some of that information with me, please. No, it's not like that. It's just something that caught my attention. No, Well, whatever. It wouldn't do to not answer a question from a friend I've sat at the same table with. I'm honored that you could call me a friend. So that little lady is, well, somewhat of a village mascot. She's beloved by everybody in the village. Some of the older folk worship her especially. Worship? I don't know much about it, you see. Girls born in the Furida family have somewhat of a sacred implication, it seems. It's one of the local beliefs in Hinamizawa. The living incarnation of Oyashiro-sama, or something like it. Or so the story goes, apparently. Oyashiro-sama? Now that you mention it, I think I saw Oyashiro-sama written on some of the Alliance's banners. What is Oyashiro-sama exactly? It's the name of the garden deity of Hinamizawa. They believe it'll exact punishment on those who would do ill towards the village. Well, if there was such a convenient god around, the guys at the dam would have long since been done in by divine justice. Luckily, nothing like that has happened to anybody just yet. The grandson of the minister who trifled with the village, as a result of Oyashiro-sama's anger, was, what did they call it again? Oh, right, Onikakushi. The minister's grandson was demoned away. That would probably be how the script is being written. No, I see. It probably would turn into something like that. Divine punishment wrought by Oyashiro-sama. Then the culprit is the living incarnation of Oyashiro-sama. That girl? Nah, even I didn't know exactly what I was saying. The fact that Oishi laughed it off was a bit of a relief. Oishi's joyous laughter was so infectious that I began to laugh like an idiot as well. Oh, this is unusual. Oishi, after laying into the horn several times, rolled the window down and leaned out, waving his arm in an exaggerated manner. It was a car headed the opposite way. Until now, we hadn't run into any other cars except our own. And of all places, it was at this desolate location. It seemed that Oishi knew the owner of that car. The other car also chirped its horn and came to a stop. Dr. Irie! Good afternoon! The other car's window rolled down slowly, revealing a young man in a white overcoat. He was about my age, or perhaps a bit older. But you really can't judge by somebody by their appearance. Why, if it isn't Oishi-san. Good afternoon. Fancy meeting you here. That's my line, Doctor. I never thought I'd see you here. What happened? Oh, nothing. Just a little house call. Oh, really? Was it an emergency? No, nothing quite that serious. Thankfully. I'll take my leave here. If I don't get back quickly, my staff will be angry with me. No, being the head of a clinic must be tough. Well then, take care. The young doctor named Irie, after gesturing his farewell, drove forwards and soon disappeared around a corner. Oishi also drove forwards, but soon came to a stop again. He pulled out a worn map book from the dash. His expression didn't have an ounce of irreverence. He was perfectly serious. What is it? The clinic shouldn't be making any house calls today. It must have been quite an emergency, or otherwise a patient with some extenuating circumstances. Oishi flipped through the pages, opening up to the map of Takatsudo. After that, he took a look around and started to figure out what our current location was. Are you saying that emergency is suspicious? Didn't I say? There's hardly anybody that lives in the Takatsudo area. The road we're on right now is here. Dr. Irie came from this direction. Having no sense of our surroundings, I couldn't digest anything about the place he was indicating on the map. We're heading towards the spot where the wallet was found. By the way, that's over here. But see? If you're heading to one of the few residences in Takatsudo, it's the wrong road. Meaning Dr. Irie came from a direction where there are no residents? As long as somebody working in the fields between these mountains didn't collapse. But if somebody collapses and you call a doctor, normally you'd bring them back with you for a more detailed examination. But just now, Dr. Erie said it was nothing serious. And it didn't seem like anybody else was in the car with him. Oishi didn't say any more than that. I also said nothing more. That doctor just now examined a patient. Close by. Only that. The noisy radio had suddenly gone quiet. The sky had just suddenly turned an oppressive color. As Oishi mused that it might start to rain, a torrential downpour started, as though trying not to disappoint him. Love the rain. Eventually, Oishi stopped the car. The only sounds to break the silence were the percussion of the rain on the roof and the soft squeak of the windshield wipers. Let's do this a bit hush-hush, shall we? Saying that in a quiet voice, he exited the car without an umbrella, careful to not make any noise. Oishi leaned over, indicating that the other side of the thicket. He was pointing to a prefabricated shed and a car that was parked beside it. The car looked obviously well cared for. It wasn't a vehicle that had been left there for several years. What's that shed? It contains equipment used by the forestry service. I heard that they don't go near it except during the summertime. Does that car belong to somebody from the forestry service then? Don't know. It doesn't look like an unofficial vehicle though. Oishi was playing it cool, but my nervousness was gradually increasing. Just in case. Saying that, Oishi returned to the car. I thought he was going to get an umbrella, but he had grabbed the onboard radio instead. Hello, this is Oishi. Do you read? Greetings. Mm-hmm. Yes, this is the Okunomiya SP. Oishi-san, we read you loud and clear. Over. I'm currently in front of the Forestry Service's equipment shed. Not the one in the direction of Yaguichi, the one in Takatsudo, if you head there from Hinamizawa. Affirmative, copy that. There's some suspicious people in the shed. Proceeding to investigate. If you don't hear back from me in 5 minutes, get in touch with the local police substation and have them send a cruiser as soon as possible. If you would, please. Understood. Well then, shall we go take a look? Since he was first confined here, he had heard the sound of a car multiple times, so he just thought the far-off sound was more of the same. However, the reaction from his captors was, until now, something he hadn't seen before. They jumped, reacting as if shocked by a jolt of electricity, and pressed against the window, cautiously peering outside. They stopped. Somebody from the forestry service? This is bad. Nah, looks like a cop to me. One of the captors lifted the boy by his collar and pressed a blade against his cheek. Hey kid, keep quiet for a bit. I think you know this, but if you try and shout, there will be problems. Toshiki Nagai was sure that the doctor had reported things to the police. He had felt relief when he thought that he was saved, but not imagining that his captors would resort to violence when they were cornered, his anxiety remained unabated. What do we do? Gotta buy time. Take the kid and slip out of the back. We'll meet back here when the heat's off. One of the perpetrators grabbed the boy by the collar and forced him to stand. Of course, Toshiki Inagai tried to resist by feigning that his illness had been aggravated by his rough treatment, but his captors paid no heed. Bang, bang, bang. The door was violently banged upon. Excuse me. Hello. Bang, 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 bang. The door was banged on again. Toshiki Nagai hesitated for a moment to respond to that voice by yelling. However, while he was being indecisive, his mouth was covered, taking that option away from him. The leader of the captors waved at the other to go. The younger perpetrator nodded in response, while keeping the boy's mouth covered, started heading towards the back door. Yellow! Do you need something? Oops. How do you do? This is the police. Would you mind opening the door? This sudden rain has us in a bit of trouble. I'll just open. The moment the lock was undone, Oishi forced the door open, and with a gleam of menace in his eyes, he pushed the man aside as he stepped into the room. Then, in the small and empty room, he was able to quickly discern that the boy he was looking for was nowhere to be seen. I heard this was an equipment shed for the forestry service, but there's nothing here at all. There was nothing inside the room that would indicate this was an equipment shed. There was only a mountain of blankets, indicating that somebody was sleeping here, alongside empty food packets strewn about. Ah, it's been empty for some time now. Never seen no equipment stored around here. But this is the Forestry Service's building, isn't it? Are you from the Forestry Service? How about ya, please? The two of them glared at each other suspiciously. Both Oishi and the man steadfastly refused to reveal their identity before the other did. The man, judging from the sharp look in Oishi's eyes, realized that it would be hard to talk his way out of this one. No matter what he said, the most time he could buy would probably be only a few dozen seconds. Only the sound of rain filled this tense moment. Just then, they heard the sound of a struggle from far off. Oishi had a hunch. There was no doubt that Akasaka, who was circling around back, had run into the perpetrators who were trying to slip away. As Oishi thought that, the man in front of him reacted a moment faster. The man swung with an attack that was more intended to obscure his vision rather than actually hit him in the face. Seizing his opportunity, the man aimed a kick at Oishi's groin without any hesitation, but he missed his mark and was unable to land that critical blow. The man, trying to pin Oishi, grabbed him by the base of his neck with both hands and fiercely tried to push him down. But as Oishi fell backwards, as if kicking the man upward, he dug his foot into the man's midsection. With that leg acting as a fulcrum, the man was flung by the falling Oishi as if by a circle throw. The two of them squared off in the pouring rain. Isn't this interesting? You want to go? Oishi, as if trying to cheer himself on, grinned smugly. He then stood up while brushing the mud off himself. Even though he countered the assault, Oishi was getting up rather awkwardly compared to the man he threw, who swiftly sprang to his feet. Oishi-san! Hurry! Akasaka's voice rang out from the distance. Judging from the distress in his voice, he was already engaged in a fight, and wanted Oishi to reconvene with him. But Oishi's hands were full as well. Akasaka-san! Sorry, but can you wait a bit? The man raised both fists into a stance that hinted at him being acquaintance with karate or some other form of martial art. Karate! Of course, Oishi, as an officer of the law, was decently versed in judo. He also had the moxie to have been through his fair share of fights before. Because of that, he could tell that the man in front of him was quite a bit better at fighting than he was. Ah, damn it. Thinking that this was going to be easy just because the order came from the Sonozaki family to release the hostage had been a big mistake. You're pretty good. It's been a while since I got this worked up. Oishi played up the situation like it was no sweat. His opponent, seeing his attitude, took that to mean that Oishi wasn't going to go down easily. The man wildly charged forward, attempting to grab Oishi. If the man managed a successful clinch from his low stance, Oishi would be tackled to the ground and end up being mounted. It was something you saw often when children fought, but it really was a bad position, since you couldn't do much once you were in it. Oishi, responding to that move, also lowered his stance to collide with the man head-on. The moment they clashed, Oishi grabbed the man's lapel. As he yanked the lapel upwards, he smashed into the man's solar plexus with the office of elbow with the same arm. It was a move from Oishi's own personal brand of brawling judo. He then grabbed on with his free hand and attempted to throw his opponent with both hands. But the man lowered his center of gravity and swung his arms in a large arc, entwining them with Oishi's. Not only that, but he had forced both of Oishi's elbows to the outside, and Oishi, now in an awkward position, was in danger of exposing his back with his hands still clutching the man's chest. This guy practiced Aikido or grappling, didn't he? Oishi, cursing the fact that his fingers were twisted into the man's shirt and couldn't get away, released its grip. But he was still in that awkward position of being bent over. And to top it off, at zero range, the man was able to read Oishi's movements completely as he tried to squirm his way into a better position. And then took the palms of his hands and swiftly clapped them over both of Oishi's ears. Ah! Debilitate. Clapping the ears in any other martial art, except for self-defense, was basically forbidden. Karate and Judo didn't recognize it as a legal technique. It was that much of a simple and dangerous attack. Oishi raised both his hands as he tried to reflexively clutch at his own ears. But before that could happen, the man wrapped his arms around Oishi's neck. His thick biceps clenched firmly around the base of Oishi's neck, like a vice. Oishi instinctively thought he was going to be killed. After all, it wasn't hard to believe that a man like this, who was accustomed to fighting, could crush his opponent's neck from this position. But his opponent didn't do that. He had chosen to keep his hold and force Oishi to lose consciousness. That's why Oishi, at that moment, even though his face was twitching, was grinning widely. Even though his opponent had a chance to kill him, he didn't choose to. He was thinking, this guy has no intention of killing me. However, even though that might be the case, the man's hold on his neck was by no means gentle. In no time at all, Oishi's consciousness began to fade. Having the experience of being taken down countless times in judo during his student days, Oishi was utterly resigned to the fact that it was over. Oh, cat's doing stuff. Be right back. Alright, I'm back and unmuted. Akasaka was finally recovering from the intense pain of being kicked in a rather sensitive area. He had bumped into the captor carrying the boy by the back entrance. He had seen Toshiki Unugai's picture plenty of times, but wasn't able to immediately certain if the boy in front of him was the real deal, what with his mouth covered in packing tape. Also, with his limited experience, it wasn't hard for him to panic over how to deal with the situation. Of course, the perpetrator didn't overlook this momentary lapse. His kick landed squarely in a critical spot, with Akasaka not even having time to call for help. As the man flung the boy over his shoulder, he headed towards the front of the shed, but upon hearing Oishi's bellowing voice, he gave up on going in that direction. He then dashed off toward the forest. As if the weight of the boy slung over his shoulder wasn't even there. Akasaka was lost for a moment. Meeting up with Oishi, who was fighting with the enemy, was by far the safer option. But he couldn't just lose sight of the fleeing man. Akasaka stood up and chased after the captor's back. He ran through a short thicket, branches and fallen leaves crunching underfoot. The tips of branches raked and clawed at him, small scratches inscribing themselves on his body, one after another. He kept on stepping into puddles of mud, and his shoes were soon filled with murky water. For Akasaka, traveling through this unexplored forest was, even though this was an emergency situation, extremely unpleasant. "Stop! This is the police!" As he said that, he regretted it immediately, as it was but a waste of breath. There wasn't a thief in the world that would politely stop when told to by the police. To a city boy like Akasaka, running through this forest was an arduous task. However, it must have been no easy task either for the man carrying the minister's grandson. He neither gained nor lost ground in his pursuit. Akasaka, upon realizing that, gained back a bit of composure. Just keep on chasing him. We were running in the same conditions. In fact, the man running with an awkward stride was at far more of a disadvantage. They couldn't run forever. Eventually, he'd definitely trip and fall. As long as he was being hounded, he would definitely stumble. And soon, his wish was fulfilled. Whoa! The man, who had stepped in something and lost his balance, was no longer able to bear the weight of the boy, dropping him. Akasaka, in all honesty, didn't care about the perpetrator at all, just as long as he could ensure the safety of Toshiki Unugai. So if the perpetrator ran off by himself, it was perfectly acceptable. But it seemed that Toshiki Unugai was important to the man as well, and didn't elect to just run away empty-handed. Akasaka didn't know what to do in this kind of situation. His first priority should probably be to ensure the safety of the boy, subduing his captor being less important. Grappling with the perpetrator wasn't something he planned on. Most likely it was either do or die. Akasaka's moment of indecision proved to be fatal. The man, aiming right between, or rather, for both of Akasaka's eyes, stuck out with a jab. Not wanting that, Akasaka raised both his hands to shield his face. At that moment, the man kicked at his unguarded midsection. The pain almost felt like his vital organs were being squeezed out of his body, but he latched onto his opponent's leg. But his opponent didn't hesitate one bit. Akasaka applying pressure and pushing him down. Leaning with his seized foot, the man jumped at him. Akasaka was unable to withstand that and fell, but under no circumstances was he letting that leg go. The two men fell together in a tangled heap. The man was desperate to pull his leg free from Akasaka, but having fallen into an awkward position, was unable to. The two of them rolled around on the ground, floundering about trying to gain an advantage. But Akasaka, who was holding onto his opponent's knee with both hands, and that opponent, who had complete freedom to move his upper body, were in two completely different situations. The man gained a positional advantage on Akasaka, who was still latched on his leg and couldn't move away, and pounded full force on his head with both his fists. Not only that, he found a rock nearby and beat it against Akasaka's skull. Thwack, thwack, thwack. The difference between being hit with a fist and being hit with a rock was vast. Akasaka quickly thought of letting go of the man's leg to free his hands to protect his head, but if he let go here, the man would get away. If he didn't dig in here, everything would be for naught. The boy who was trying to save was right there. He was going to save him and go back to Tokyo. If he could do that, then it was goodbye to this freakish village. Without looking, I could tell my forehead had split open and was gushing blood. But I didn't let go of the man's leg. How could I? I won't let go. When the man realized that no matter how much he beat my head, he wasn't getting away, he used both his hands to grab my throat as if to crush my windpipe. I pulled my head back as a slight form of resistance, but it was of no use. The man's hands enveloped my neck and began to crush it like a vice. It was less about the pain of not being able to breathe, so much as it was choking so hard I felt like I was going to throw up. It felt like my stomach was going to turn itself inside out, but I could only endure it. Damn it, damn it, damn it. My throat hurts. I won't let go. I can't let go. I didn't want to be here. I wanted to resolve this and go back to Tokyo. Go back to Tokyo and talk to Yukie all about our unborn child. We were going to talk about our bright future. I had no intention of loosening my grip. However, it loosened just a bit and the man's leg came free. The man kicked as hard as possible and I tumbled backwards. My head was spinning and I was unable to get up right away. No, I couldn't even put any strength into getting up in the first place. Even so, I couldn't back down. If I let him escape now, this chance would never come again. Even just catching their scent was nothing short of a miracle. If we weren't able to get the minister's grandson back here, there wouldn't be another chance. The man tried to drag the boy to his feet, but the kid was displaying some unexpected resistance, allowing me to get up unnoticed. I grasped the rock the man had just beat me over the head with. Now it's my turn. Yarg! The rock should be able to supplement what meager strength I had left, adding more than enough power to my attack. My fist, still wrapped around the rock, dug into the side of the man's torso. It seems like it hurt him quite a bit. Yeah. The man rolled around for a bit, clutching his side. Freed from the man's grip, the boy hid behind me. Toshiginu guy, right? I've come to help you. To the boy, those were the words he was waiting for the most. But the crisis was still not over. That was because even though he was still clutching at his side, the man had gotten up again, and had taken a fighting stance. I could see in the man's eye the resentment at the pain I had caused him, and the confidence that he could still beat me. If we were to clash head-on again, he might not even stop if my head were split open. Stop resisting. Surrender quietly. You should just hand the boy over. Do you want me to snap your neck? Who would listen to you now? Reinforcements are already on their way. There's nowhere for you to run. The man reacted adversely to the word reinforcements. That was because he now knew that arguing like this wasn't just a waste of time, but it put him closer and closer to danger. Realizing that, the man shifted mental gears almost too quickly. Let's finish this fast. How about this? What the man pulled from his back pocket was, of all things, a gun. Of course, I'm a police officer. It's not like I don't know what a gun is. But having one point at me was something I've never experienced before. Was it real? Of course it was. There's no way I'd be a replica in a situation like this. Put both of your hands behind your head and lay down quietly. Don't get cocky, you villain. I won't do anything you say. You stupid idiot. Do you not know what this is without me shooting you with it? Then shoot. Reinforcements will hear the gunshot and head right over here. Are you stupid? We're in the middle of the forest, and on top of that, it's raining. They'll never hear a good thing. As long as he still held that gun, no matter how much I yelled at him, I was at a distinct disadvantage. But I still had a fighting chance. If I were in his shoes, instead of wasting time yelling at each other like this, I would just shoot him and take the boy. That way was the fastest, and would suppress any sort of further resistance from him. But the man was demanding my surrender without having fired a shot, meaning that he either didn't want to shoot or couldn't. In other words, the man in front of me was soft. If I could buy even just a little more time, the factors would lead to my victory were numerous. Oishi was probably on his way, and the reinforcements we called for before coming here should already be well on their way too. Not only that, they should have contacted the local police box. Without a doubt, somebody stationed in the village would be here much quicker than that. Damn it. Do I have to put a bullet in you to understand how dangerous this thing is? There's no escape. Don't add to your crimes. At that moment, I heard the rustling of foliage and heavy footsteps approaching. If Oishi was coming here, it was a whole new ball game. The man couldn't have more than one gun. Oishi-san! Over here! Over here! Huh? I had thought that time was on my side, but I had failed to even imagine that the enemy could also have reinforcements. You could tell the man who had just appeared was one of the perpetrators just by looking at him. What are you doing? If you don't hurry up, the police will get here. Stop lollygagging. Damn it. What happened to Oishi-san? Ah, that chubby fella? He's down for the count. He is? Damn it. The boy, sensitive to the impending danger, curled up behind my back. How could this be? Damn it. Your buddy isn't coming. Serves you right. Shoes on the other foot now. As I backed up against a large tree while still protecting the boy, the second man also pulled out a gun. Won't be saying this twice. Put your hands on your head and lie down. I refuse. As I shouted in protest, blood erupted from my left shoulder. It took a few moments to register that I had been shot. Compared to the... I gotta get the cat out of here, one sec. Alright, the cat has vacated the premises. Compared to the ones from movies and TV dramas, the first actual gunshot I heard was simple and mundane. In fact, the sound was more akin to the small fireworks I used to buy from the corner store as a kid. But there was no comparing the pain. It was a fear you knew only after you'd been shot. Sir? Are you okay? Are you okay? The boy in his confusion tugged at my clothes, agitating the wound further. I wanted to put on a bold face and reassure him, but my voice was hoarse, and had the opposite effect. I'm alright. I've already called for backup. There'll be a full squad here soon. Yeah. It'll be quicker to put on through your head before the cops. Put one through your head before the cops get here. But the family said no needless killing, so I'm taking it easy on ya. Don't mess with me or I ain't holding back. This was bad. It was very, very bad. The second man was a completely different beast than the first. He had no signs of indecisiveness or mercy. If this man said he'd shoot, he'd shoot. He wasn't somebody that a man like me could buy time from. I really hated to admit it, but at that moment, the image of Yukie's smiling face crossed the back of my mind. I knew what that meant. I was warning myself to not throw my life away over a matter of pride. Of course, I didn't want to die here. I was just starting a new life with Yukie, and I wanted to see the face of our soon-to-be-born child. Why should I risk my life for some minister's grandson when I was at such a critical juncture in my own life? Damn it. I need to stop rambling at myself. So what do I do now? Give up the boy and extend my own life? What a good idea. Everybody's life is precious. My own life was in danger. Nobody would blame me. God damn it. It hurts. It hurts. If I had known it would be this painful, I wouldn't have played the tough guy. My biggest miscalculation, though, was that the sound of the gunshot was far quieter than I had imagined. You shot your gun before. How would you not know how quiet or loud it was? If it was only that loud, it would be drowned out by the rain in the forest. It wasn't something that somebody far away could hear. Damn it. Wait, just wait. I don't want to die. I don't want to kill you. As long as you understand. Don't shoot, okay? Don't shoot. I have a wife waiting for me at home. I don't want to die. I won't shoot as long as you don't yell or nothing. Just quietly put your hands on your head and lie down. Will you really? Will you really? You'll keep your promise, right? This is a promise between men. I will. It's a promise between men. Keep your promise. Keep it. I'm going to get down on the ground, okay? I'm getting down. I'll keep my promise, so stop pointing that gun at me. You're still thinking of shooting me, aren't you? You want to shoot me, don't you? When I get down on the ground, you're just going to shoot me in the back of the head, aren't you? I won't. Fine. I'll put it away. Put the gun away. It's a promise between men. There. No problem now, right? Yeah, absolutely no complaints. Ah. It was over in a flash. The moment he lowered his gun, Oishi didn't let his chance slip by. Oishi had been assessing the situation for quite some time from behind the two men. But since they had their guns trained on me, he didn't really have a chance to jump in. Seeing the look on Oishi's face indicating that he wanted me to create an opening, I took on that role completely. Oishi forcefully lifted the arm that was holding the gun. He then took the gun from the man's hand in only an instant. The other man, who was a bit slow in grasping what was happening, pointed his gun at them, but with his ally grappling with Oishi, he couldn't pull the trigger. If that man was the one that was wrestling with Oishi at the moment, he might have shot without hesitation. But this man wouldn't shoot. He couldn't shoot. Oishi kicked the other man away, while aiming the stolen gun with his left hand, pulled out his own. With guns akimbo, he's aiming at both men at the same time. I do believe that's checkmate. It was perfectly played. But, heedless of the guns pointed at them, the men shouted scram as they scattered away at full speed. It was over in an instant. Those two running away without putting up a fight was honestly unexpected. Oishi, quietly clicking his tongue into admonishment, slipped both guns into his pants pockets. Those guys know their stuff. What do you mean? An officer won't fire at somebody who's fleeing. I want to keep my pension here. Oishi and I grinned at each other. Are you Toshiki Inugai? The grandson of the Minister of Construction Inugai? Yes. This is going to be a major incident. We probably only cut the tail off the lizard, though. Oishi smiled amusedly. The fact that the Onigifuchi Defense Alliance, or rather, the Sonozaki family behind them, was pulling the strings was apparent, but proving it wouldn't be easy. And, with apologies to Oishi, this incident was unlikely to go public. If this caused an uproar, it would obviously lead to the minister losing his office. With HQ having decided that doing so was in the national interest, this would probably be cleaned up quietly. It might be a rough way of saying it, but this was born in the shadows, and was going to die in the shadows. Oishi probably already understood the implications behind this incident. For the time being, let's cordon off the area. It seems that one of them still has a gun. After that, let's get Inugai-kun to safety and get you to the hospital. As the tension in the situation faded, the pain from the gunshot wound in my shoulder blossomed once again. My forehead was also stinging painfully, and had grown hot enough to start a fire. Thinking that the tension had caused me to sweat, I wiped my forehead, but what came off was a large amount of blood. I realized that my shirt had been stained bright crimson from the blood flowing from my head. I turned around. The boy was safe and sound, without a doubt. There would probably be an investigation on the men who ran, but that was for another day. At this point in time, I could safely say we had cleared the major hurdle of securing the boy's safety. So, now I can pass out safely. As soon as I recognized that, it felt like the lights in my head had been hit by a power failure. My knees buckled from underneath me, the ground there feeling as soft as a cloud. It didn't feel unpleasant even as I was covered in the rain-soaked mud. Luigi came closer, asking if I was okay, but somehow I couldn't tell. I turned off the switch to the last light in my head. The exhaustion enveloped me. Sleep. Something softer than any blanket wrapped around me. Now what? Chapter 4. Oh, a very kind person. I'm going to push a bit more forward after this because we have time. I feel like maybe it's the last chapter? I'm not sure. I'm definitely not going to finish that today, if it is. I'll check after the tip. Patients admitted to the hospital can only accept calls at fixed times. That's why she wouldn't be receiving a call from him today. Yesterday she had teased him that he got lonely easily, so he may have struggled with the idea of calling her sooner. That was much easier to imagine, rather than that he might just be too busy to call. Because he's just that type of person. Yukie, whispering that, smiled to herself. The announcement that visiting hours were over played over the hospital intercom, along with some music. She exchanged pleasantries with the family of the patient that was staying in the same room as her. Probably eager for his mother to be discharged, their small child was wearing a beaming smile. That child's mother was pregnant in the bed next to mine with what may be their new brother or sister. They were probably ready to burst with the expectations, dreams, and worries of having a new sibling, the joys of a growing family. Bathing in those warm feelings, I stroked my own belly, which had grown quite large. I had talked with him about how many children we wanted to have. We talked about how if we had 3, it would certainly be lively. However, there was the inescapable worry of whether I would be able to handle giving birth that many times. There isn't a mother out there who would hate to give birth because of that worry, though. Yuki, smiling as she said that to herself, gently stroked her stomach. The Metropolitan Public Safety Division. The place where that man's sense of justice had led him. That person was actually a very gentle, very fragile person. He didn't talk much about the specifics, but I didn't think he was suited for the assignment he was on right now. But as long as he was going to try his best, I'd watch over him warmly. Your father, you see, is a very hard worker, you know? Coochie coochie coo. Yuki seemed to be enjoying herself as she talked to her own belly. At that moment, Yuki suddenly began concerned about something and looked out the window. It used to be this time, long ago. She remembered that when she was little, around this time in the countryside where her grandmother lived, the Higurashi would fill the air with their chorus, back in Hinamizawa. This was the middle of Tokyo. Unlike in the countryside, you couldn't hear the song of the Higurashi. But for some reason, at that moment, Yukie felt that she wanted to hear that song. Alright, pull up the next chapter. And I'll get reminded what chapter it is once I get there. Yeah, save and load. End of chapter 3. So that means it's the end of chapter 4, which means, as far as my assumptions go, I still have 2 more chapters, so I'll keep going for a while. That was my first time losing consciousness. You often hear of regaining consciousness on top of a bed, but this was my first time actually experiencing it. Hello? Are you okay? Realizing that I was awake, the young doctor called out to me. I didn't intend to respond, but it seems my body language had told him I was conscious. My head was wrapped in bandages. Scratches all over my body had also been treated. My sense of pain also returned with my consciousness, causing me to groan from the intense pain of shooting all through me. Don't try to get up. Just stay lying down, please. It seems that you took quite a few blows to the head. I want you to stay rested so we can monitor your condition for at least the next 24 hours. Where is this? This is my clinic. Pleased to meet you. My name is Irie. I remembered that this young doctor was the one in the car headed the opposite way earlier. Is there somebody here? Where's Oishi-san? Ah, I'll call him over. There's no smoking inside the clinic, so I had him smoke outside. Dr. Irie left the room to go call Oishi. The scenery outside the window was tinted with gold. The pouring rain had stopped, with the voices of the Higurashi heralding the cooling temperature. I felt that the tone of the Higurashi voices was comfort. Eventually, I could hear heavy footsteps coming closer, which I reckoned to be Oishi's. The fog that was enveloping my head slowly faded back to reality. What had happened since then? What had happened to the boy? What about the reinforcements from Tokyo? The door to the room flew open, allowing Dr. Irie and Oishi to enter. So there's no serious damage, is there? I can't promise that. I assessed the wound to his head was dangerous the moment I saw it. Got it. I want to have a little chat alone with him for a bit. Would you mind? Yeah, go ahead. Call me if anything happens. Oishi, after basically forcing Dr. Irie outside, shut the door. How are you feeling? I did something I'm not used to, so I'm pretty banged up all over. No. Oishi brought over a folding chair that was leaning against the wall and sat down beside the bed. Were the perpetrators arrested? Unfortunately, no. They probably already fled the prefecture, or are being hidden by the villagers. Well, we won't let them get away. What about the minister's grandson? They're taking care of him at the station. But your colleagues from Tokyo are rather insistent that nothing be recorded. Shige-chan doesn't like that too much. No. The kidnapping was a confidential matter, so his custody was also probably being kept under wraps. How the kidnapping of the minister's grandson would be handled, how it would be covered up, treated like it never happened, would be handled by the brass. If this case ended without the nation going into an uproar about it, then our job had been done. The possibility that the minister had negotiated with the perpetrators couldn't be ruled out. But something like that was no longer my concern. My role in this case was over. Sorry for the trouble. You must think that public safety is a rather unseemly place, don't you? No. We all work on the government's dime. Oishi laughed boisterously. When we first met, I was somewhat prejudiced against Oishi, but now that feeling was gone completely. It would be more convenient for us if this case was handled properly instead of being hidden away. If that happened, we'd be able to have something to go at the Sonozaki family with, since they were behind it all. Well, if we just start poking around, we'll get all sorts of pressure put on us, though. What a mess. Are you going to continue the fight against the Sonozaki family after this? Nah. There's all sorts of dark rumors swirling around them, but it's not like I have a personal grudge. It'd be wise not step on any toes here. No. Oishi laughed happily, and I couldn't help but laugh along. Oh, that's right. There was word at the station from the prefectural police. Your colleagues arrived at Nagoya and are driving up here right now. You got your battle scars, so you're being recalled to Tokyo, apparently. That's how it's shaking up. Good job. Your work in Okonomiya is safely over. I was being recalled to Tokyo. I inadvertently breathed a sigh of relief when I heard those words. I'm deeply thankful for your cooperation, Oishi-san. It seems the collaboration fee I paid you didn't go to waste. No, I kind of meant that as a joke, though. Oishi took out his wallet, casually pulled out several large bills, and jammed them into the breast pocket of my shirt. This isn't a refund on the collaboration fee, you hear? This is just me gifting you a little spending money. The booze around here is pretty good. Use this to buy yourself a little souvenir. Oishi flashed me a grin. If your injuries turn out to be not too serious, call me before you head back to Tokyo, will you? The old man and Sato-san said they'd like to sit at a table with you again. Oh my. Can't refuse that. And no tricks this time. Just some plain old fun. They always say that. This world is done for if an active officer can cheat that blatantly. It's not often that we meet someone who's more than a match for us. It's too bad you're going back to Tokyo. When I heard the words going back to Tokyo from Oishi, I was reminded once again that I was relieved from my duties. Soon, Yukie would be giving birth. It might still be possible to attend to the delivery that I had at one time given up on. When I thought that, the pain from my injuries became trivial. I wanted to hurry back to Tokyo and see Yukie at once. Can you pretend that your injuries are a bit more serious and hang around Okonomiya for a bit? I can introduce you to a few nice places. Of course, I won't make you pay for everything. I'm terribly sorry, but I'll have to take a rain check on that. My wife is due to give birth any day now. I want to hurry back home. Oh my, oh my. I didn't know that. Then you shouldn't be hanging around here. You have to hurry back home. For a while after that, Oishi's asked all sorts of questions about my wife, teasing and bantering with me. Well then, how do you feel? Think you can get up? Yeah, it's not so bad, thanks to you. I can get up and walk no problem. I stood up and shuffled around for a bit, which seemed to amuse Oishi. Nah, I just thought that you might not feel comfortable at a hospital in Hinamizawa. Dr. Yuri said he wanted you to stay overnight, but we still haven't caught the perpetrators. For the time being, this is enemy territory for you after all. Are you saying this hospital isn't safe? Nah. Well, Dr. Yuri is somebody who's well regarded in the community. I don't think anything will happen while you're here, but I'm more worried about your mental health. I had to relax a bit now that things had progressed this far, but it was exactly as Oishi had said. When I realized that this was enemy territory, I suddenly felt uncomfortable. With the only thing left for me to do was leave, the chance that I would come to harm was logically fairly low. But that didn't mean I was completely safe. That's right. If I'm just going to be lying down, then doing it in a hotel bed won't be all that different. Right, right. I also think that's for the best. At that moment, I caught a glimpse of the clock over Uishi's shoulder. It was the evening. The hours when I could call Yuki at the hospital were almost over. I wanted to tell her as quickly as possible that I would soon be back at her side. I want to call Yuki at the hospital. Is there a public phone in the lobby? Nah, you newlyweds are all like this. If I recall correctly, there's one by the register. I'll be waiting here, so go ahead, go ahead. Oishi, laughing while saying that he was jealous, opened up the window and pulled out a cigarette, even though he was in a hospital room. Appreciative at how considerate Oishi was, I set out to the lobby to find the phone. The lobby was just a short distance down the hallway from the hospital room. I thought that this hospital was a bit too grand for a village like this, but of course it was nothing compared to the general hospital Yuki was admitted to. Running inside a hospital wasn't the best of manners, but calling hours would soon end, so I dashed over in a hurry. There was nobody else in the lobby. It may have been the evening, but there was nobody at the reception desk. Well, this one might actually be lucky for me. I wasn't planning to have a conversation to feel guilty about, but it would still be embarrassing to having someone listen to the conversation between me and Yukie. Taking a quick look around, I soon found the payphone. Digging around in my pockets, I grabbed a few coins. I was calling Tokyo from here, so I would burn through this amount fairly quickly. I picked up the receiver and inserted a coin, then dialed the number for UK's hospital, which I had completely memorized at this point. Where, where... The number for UK's hospital had a lot of 8s and 9s, so dialing it in inevitably took some time. Normally it wouldn't be a big deal, but currently, any time was precious. However, I felt that something was strange as I was dialing in the number. I don't know how exactly to put it, but it was as if the receiver was too quiet. That unique white noise from the telephone line wasn't there. Somehow I felt that I wasn't getting any feedback from the phone. Without feeling a response, I hung up the receiver to try again. The coin popped out from the return slot. I reinserted the coin and began dialing once again, but the receiver was still dead silent. What is this? Is it disconnected? While I was wasting time like this, the amount I had to spend talking with Yukie shrunk. I began to feel needlessly impatient. Excuse me! I felt the presence of someone on the other side of the glass, so I called out. There was an immediate response, and a man who seemed like a pharmacist came over. Yes, how can I help you? Pardon me. This phone seems to be acting a little strange. Could you take a look at it? The man came over and tried testing various things with the receiver and pressed to his ear. Come to think of it, this was someone who worked at the hospital, not someone from the phone company. Just as I didn't know much about phones, neither would he. Huh, what's this? The man held up the cord that connected the phone to the wall. It was cut. It was completely severed. What the heck is that? Well, this is a dilly of a pickle. Can't do anything with this until somebody from the phone company comes and fixes it. If you're looking for a phone, do you want to use the one in the office? I didn't want the people in the hospital office around while I was talking. Is there another payphone close by? Let's see. If you leave here and follow the road, you'll come out into the shopping district. I think there's a smoke shop on the corner around there. If you head that way, you should be able to find one soon enough and get stabbed. I was dressed in a hospital gown. I was wearing sandals on my feet. My head was wrapped in bandages. Just looking at me, you could tell I was a hospital patient. No matter how you looked at it, I was not dressed to be wandering outside. But that's where the impetuousness of youth came in. Choosing the chance to talk to Yuki for even a little longer, I headed outside in my current state. Follow the road to the shopping district. Should be able to find one soon enough. With only those 2 lines as my guide, I ran outside the gates of the hospital. Gotta set the dog free now. Alright, I'm back. With the village nestled in a valley, when the sun set, it got dark pretty quickly. The sparse streetlights lit up enough to start attracting moths. Should be sparse, right? Can't even tell.
Sparse.
Sparse. Okay. The Higurashi, knowing the time for their course was soon at a close, redoubled their fragile cries. When they cry. Finding the payphone wasn't as easy as the person at the hospital had suggested. Was it still up ahead? Did I miss it already? Was it just getting farther away? Just as I was about to be crushed by the wave of uncertainty towering over me, I found a shop on the corner with cigarettes written on a small sign. That's a new background. My joy spurred me onwards. Just as I had heard at the hospital, set next to the counter of the cigarette shop was an antiquated payphone. I wasn't wearing a watch, so I didn't know what time it was. I probably didn't have much time left, though. But it was enough. Just as long as I could tell Yuki my job was done and I would be coming home soon. Picking up the receiver, I slid a coin down the slot. But I felt that something was strange, just like at the hospital. Even after inserting the coin, the phone showed no response. I hung up the receiver and tried putting in the coin one more time. But there was absolutely no response. This phone was dead. It couldn't be. Thinking that, I felt along the cord that protruded from the back of the phone. Doing that, my hands found the end of a completely severed line. What is this? Having now had the same thing happen twice, my bafflement was accompanied by a sense of unease. It seemed that the cord had been severed cleanly by a sharp blade of some sort. And I may be mistaken, but it didn't look like much time had passed since it was cut. Excuse me. Hello? Opening up the booth window of the tobacco shop, I looked for someone in the dimly lit interior. Eventually, there were the sounds of somebody plodding down some stairs, and an old lady appeared. The old lady's plodding and lethargic steps, for some reason, only served to make me more frantic. You need some cigarettes? I'll need to get my husband. I'm not here to buy cigarettes. Rather, this phone here. Realizing that saying the phone was broken and asking them to take a look at it was going to get me nowhere, I swallowed back my words. Sorry, it seems that this phone is broken. I was wondering if you could tell me where there's another payphone. The old lady moved her jaw up and down slowly as if chewing on the meaning of my words. It seemed that she wouldn't understand until she had digested things thoroughly. So the phone's broken? That's a dilly of a pickle. You should try another payphone. The old lady directed me to another payphone that seemed quite a ways away, almost like she's pointing me away into a very dangerous area. Her way of telling me was so long-winded that I inadvertently started to get impatient. At that moment, I spotted a clock in the dim interior of the store. The minute hand was just about to point straight up. Even if there was a phone right here that I could use, I would only be able to tell Yukie good night with the time I had left. On top of that, my destination was a remote payphone which I didn't know the exact distance to. If I was in a normal state of mind, deciding to give up the phone today would have been the natural thought process. But at that moment, I had become somewhat stubborn for some reason. Unable to use the phone in the hospital, and coming out here and still being unable to use one. There was no mistaking that I had become quite insistent on using a phone. Why I needed a phone, I don't remember anymore. Thank you very much. I'll try looking for that phone booth. Refusing her offer to draw me a map, I left the tobacco shop. I don't need no directions. According to the old lady, even though the phone booth was quite far away, it would be easy to find. If I just followed this road straight down, I'd eventually find it. Sandals flapping as I ran, I couldn't help but laugh at myself. I'll admit that I was quite steadfast about calling Yukie. But there were days when I tried or was tired or busy when I wouldn't call her. Even today, my entire body was covered with injuries, and I was dead tired. On top of that, there wasn't much time left. It wouldn't be strange at all if today was one of those days I didn't call her. But having twice been foiled trying to call her, had I become hot-headed about it? No. Was I like a dog who was being told to stay with a piece of food dangled in my face? No. What am I doing? Even so, I somehow couldn't quell the uneasy feeling sitting in my stomach. It was like that with the hospital phone, and the same with the one at the tobacco shop. Both cords were definitely not severed from being frayed by long years of use. The clean cuts indicated that someone had taken something sharp and deliberately cut them. But who? And for what reason? The more I thought about it, the uneasier I felt, so I tried to push that thought aside. How much had I run so far? The scenery around me was no longer that of a shopping district, with residential buildings scattered about the lonely road. The surroundings had already grown dark. I was blatantly out too far for a quick phone call, and it was quite obvious I was far removed from the hospital. I recalled the clock I saw at the tobacco shop. It might almost be time. I had run for quite a bit, so my breathing had grown ragged. If I had just wanted to hear Yukie's voice, I should have just thrown away my reservations and borrowed the phone in the office. I regretted it a little. Well then, was it about time to give up? No. Just when I thought that, I saw the light in front of me. The payphone light. I had finally found it. My guiding starlight. It was a phone booth. It seemed that the light in the phone booth had recently been changed, as it shone with a vivid white light. Although in the gloom of Hinamizawa, it was nothing more than a gathering spot for moths. But in any case, I had finally found it. As my hand touched the door of the phone booth, I realized I was breathing and sweating heavily. I didn't know what time it was right now, but even if it was just for a moment, I might be able to get in touch with Yukie. Since I had spent all this effort getting here, turning back without even giving it a try was out of the question. Before I picked up the receiver, another wave of uneasiness washed over me. Howdy, stranger, is the phone not working? I was worried that this phone cord might be severed as well. How was the cord in this phone booth? Squatting down, I followed the bundle of cables as they ran along the corner into the ceiling. At a glance, nothing was out of the ordinary. I ran my fingers as far as I could along the line to check it out. The only thing they found was a thick layer of dust. Nothing out of the ordinary. I wondered if it was popular in Hinamizawa to cut the cords of payphones as some sort of tasteless prank. It might be prudent to talk to Oishi-san about this later. Even if it was nothing more than a prank, it was still vandalism of public property. In any case, this one was fine, this time. Pulling out a coin from my pocket with one hand, I picked up the receiver with the other. But this time, before the receiver even reached my ear, I felt something was off. The receiver was light. It was more than a slightly unpleasant feeling. It felt almost sickening. To verify the source of my displeasure, I peered at the receiver in my hand with a measure of reluctance. What the hell is this? The coiled cord that connected the receiver to the rest of the phone had been ripped apart, the tip of the cable swaying in the air. It was all I could do to restrain myself as a raw and unpleasant feeling worked its way up the small of my back. It was a type of dread. At that moment, I heard the crunch of somebody stepping on gravel. The light was reflecting off the glass walls of the booth, leaving me unable to see outside into the darkness. I steeled myself and stepped out of the phone booth. The inside of the booth was lit with that strong light, which might have made it warmer in there. Just stepping outside, I could feel a chill wash over me. And there was the silhouette of a person. A small silhouette. The long hair of that silhouette was blown about by the cool breeze. Injured people shouldn't be sneaking out of the hospital. Somewhere in my head, I knew who this girl was. I didn't have any basis for it, but I knew that she was that girl. Right, Akasaka? She, Rika Furude, said that almost like it was a warning. Did you do this to the phone cord? Her expression remained unchanged, and my question was left unanswered. In other words, no response. Regardless, I felt that she had affirmed my suspicions. Why would you do something like this? Why? The last word had a tinge of anger behind it. I frantically tried to smooth things out, but she didn't seem very afraid. There's nothing that can be done. Huh? I interpreted her words as meaning that I wasn't going to be in time for calling hours at the hospital. But thinking about it, that would have been a strange thing to say. Why would she know something like that? I could take what she had said to have any other meaning. She just stood there like a mannequin, not even moving an inch. Almost to the point that if the wind wasn't occasionally rustling through her long hair, there would be the illusion that time had stopped. I know very well that you think I'm disgusting, Akasaka. Huh? Huh? No, that's not true. My denial came out almost like a bad piece composed for a poetry slam, but her words were right on the mark. I'd always felt something ominous and uncanny about her. Ever since her strange threats at the shrine. She had noticed that my expression was contrary to my words, simply laughing at the gap between them. Akasaka, you coward. I'm not a coward. Being laughed at by this small child didn't sit well with me. So I said that. Even if you find another phone, it's too late. That's right. She didn't even have to say it. I was absolutely too late. I might have already missed calling hours even by the time I reached this phone booth. I was too late. I had no option but to give up for today. Once I decided that, my unhealthy obsession with phones suddenly faded. Even I thought it was strange that I was that obsessed. That strange obsession now gone, I began to laugh at how hopeless I was. I mean, just look at what I was wearing. It wasn't normal. A hospital gown and sandals. My head wrapped in bandages, my body completely soaked in sweat. It was a wonder that the old lady at the tobacco shop wasn't surprised to see me. With wanting to hear Yuki's voice as my motive, I had traps, another word I'm not used to saying out loud. Find that one as well. Traps?
Traipse.
Traipse around the town the entire... Evening. I didn't know whether to call it the follies of youth or simply plain embarrassing. In any case, it was all I could do but to laugh at myself. Now, there's nothing left for Akasaka to do tonight. You're right, there's nothing. I'll just quietly return to the hospital. That's fine. Do you know the way? I hope I do. She waved her little hand as I began to head back the way I came. She began to follow alongside me. Looking at her face, I could see that she wore a mischievous smile, as if she was extremely interested in whether or not I would get lost. Is Riki-chan's house also this way? It is. Won't your parents be won't you parents be mad that you're walking around alone at this hour? Not really. My parents are busy today, so they probably forgot about me. Even then, it's best if you head on home. They'll definitely be angry. Even if they are, it's much more interesting to talk with Akasaka, so I'm fine. She said that with a face free from worry as she looked up at me once more and smiled. When she showed me that smile, the eerie feelings surrounding her faded. But even then, she was still as mysterious to me as ever. We arrived at the corner I had turned at earlier, but it was much darker than before. With the point of view changed on the return trip, I wasn't very confident that this actually was the corner I turned at. There's not mistake, it had to be this corner. As I began to move my feet again, the girl grabbed onto my clothes. Isn't Akasaka going back to the hospital? Of course, at least I intend to. Am I going the wrong way? A short moment of silence. Eventually, still holding onto my clothes, she began to walk. It was the beginning of the walk to the hospital this mysterious girl would take me on. I think that is a good spot to stop at, because it seems like Rika's about to talk to him or something. It seems. Maybe? I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, we're definitely going to stop there for today. And, well, we stop there. And my next stream will be Tuesday evening at 7 p.m., finishing up Omen Sight most likely. Hope you can join in. Y'all have a good rest of your day and night for those Europeans. Bye-bye.